Today on Locked On Rockies, we hear from the new president of baseball ops. He says he's a sucker for challenge. He's got a lot of challenges ahead.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 12th day of November in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies here in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. Best way to help the show grow, best way to participate with the show is hanging out with us here on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Head on over there, like the videos, make sure you're subscribed so you're staying up to date with all things Colorado Rockies baseball throughout the offseason and beyond. I'm your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Thanks to all of your support. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen of the day. We got reactions. We got our first comments from the new president of baseball operations, Paul DePodesta, and we're going to talk about it. Kind of got some perspectives from some folks covering the teams and just give my thoughts on some of the things that he said. Because one thing, as much as I was super fired up and everything, we do have to allow time for the process to go through, right? We reacted to the signing, we reacted to the news, we were just going with those initial reactions, but from this point forward, the judgment and the criticism has to be leveled against what the actions are. And since it's not even been a week and since the ink has dried, there's obviously not been a lot of time for things to happen, but there are signs and things to look for. And we see a couple of these from MLB.com and Purple Row. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we go any further, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Okay, so we are diving in here to Locked On Rockies for this Wednesday episode, and we hear some quotes here from Paul DePodesta talking about, basically chiming in and checking in here as he is in Vegas right now, looking out ahead of these meetings and GM meetings and getting things ready to go. And he had a couple of comments. He talked with MLB Network. He had a couple of things. And so we're starting to get our first kind of insights into why he was taking this job. I like kind of this Thomas Harding, part of this Thomas Harding piece when he's talking about the atmosphere of being on the Padres side in the 2007 wild card game, or I should say game 163. To then go into the playoffs. My main takeaways here from some of the stuff that we've heard early on is these are things that are it's kind of what you have to say. And I'm not saying this as a I was hoping for him to come in scorched earth and do all this stuff. There's I think the biggest takeaway here right now is there just hasn't been a lot of time that has passed yet. And I think one of the things here is acknowledging that this is looked at as a challenge, looked at this as something that is going to take a considerable amount of effort here in order to turn things around. One of the things that was interesting here when he was talking with MLB Network earlier that I heard was the main difference, one of the things that was very interesting and very different for him between baseball and football was the lack of a minor league system. So for him to already kind of be thinking about, well, how do we manage the minors? How do we handle the minor league system? How do we beef that up? How do we make sure that is an important pipeline? That's one of those small things. Again, we are diving into introductory first interviews here, but I like the idea. I mean, I like having that focus on, wow, this I've been working in the NFL. I've been doing these things. The player development been completely different. when I was in baseball, I realized how important those minor league systems. I realized how important that player development was. I realized how important it was for us to be making sure that we were on top of that area of the game of the organization. That's one of those things that's a good sign. I think when you're looking for building and creating that sustainable long-term success for the Colorado Rockies, when you're looking to create something that will continuously turn success, the Rockies becoming a team that is very good at what they've advertised and said that they've been good at, player development, would be massive. If you can actually make sure that you are maximizing, your resources, your analytics, and all of that stuff to make sure that you are bringing pitchers in that you can then, develop into quality starters that can handle the home and the road. I mean, development is such a big buzzword right now for the Colorado Rockies. We've been told for years and years and years that this is a draft and develop team. And maybe some more with others than I know Bill Schmidt. That was kind of really his big thing. And there might be differences there. But the Rockies, this should be a massive priority, especially right now. The Rockies farm system does have interesting guys, does have some stuff, but they need to make sure that it's getting these guys, not only putting the right people into the system, but getting that maximum potential out of them. We haven't seen anybody really knock the doors out of the major league level here when it comes to young Rockies players outside of maybe your Hunter Goodman. Ezekiel Tovar probably as well. But for DePodesta to DePodesta, I keep always forgetting the D there. For that to be a talking point already, it's a good sign. I mean, again, like I said, it's early, but I think one of the foundations for him to be successful in his role and for his team to be successful in his role, and I want to bring up the team aspect of that as well, is player development, player drafting, and I think this was an interesting point from Purple Row here as well, using the Rule 5 draft as well for making sure that you're going to be, really looking at, because this was kind of Moneyball, right? The whole philosophy of this guy really good at, get on base, can walk, blah, blah, blah. There's a different bunch of, elements and things that have spun off of that. But these are the areas that if he's going to be if he is going to be successful, then he will be successful in this role because he helped turn around player development. And this is from Renee Descartes' Tuesday Rock Pile over here. We're going to go through a few of these here. What to watch for in the early days of Paul DePodesta's Rockies rebuild. And here's what she says about the just about some 40-man and the Rule 5 draft here as well. So the date for this decision is November 18th. So a week from yesterday. Who will be added to the 40-man? And this is Renee. Certainly Gabriel Hughes and Wilton Herrera. But which other prospects will DePodesta choose to protect? I mean, that's going to be, I think this is going to be a really fascinating part here as these roster decisions. I mean, I know, that's kind of part of my thing of the shorter timeline here. That's a lot of player evaluation to do throughout the system and everything between now. And he might have started after doing the interviews when they started. He might have already been keeping an eye on it. But that's a lot of players to really look at and see and dive into the numbers and dive into what they say about who should be on the 40-man and then who shouldn't be protected coming into the Rule 5 and tendered a contract as well. As back to Purple Row here. November 21st is the deadline. So the Rockies have the 40-man roster deadline coming up, and now they have to tender, the deadline to tender these contracts here, which is coming up in November 21st. An immediate decision facing DePodesta is which players will be offered a contract. His choices will reveal quite a bit about his rebuild approach. In the meantime, these are players who may not receive contracts. Angel Shavihi, Ronze Contreras, Anthony Molina, Luis Peralta, Ryan Rollison, Michael Tolia. I mean, these are, some of these names, especially when you're talking about guys like Shavi and Tolia, who have seen some considerable major league time off the, with the Rockies over the last couple of years, with some moments, but never able to really fully leading up to it. I couldn't agree more here with Renee in this piece of these decisions really are going to shape what the Rockies are going to do. And if you don't tender some of these contracts, right, if you do move on from some of these players, that's going to really shape and change how you're going to be approaching possibly free agency, calling guys up. The Rockies are going to have to, I think that's going to be at the end of this month, I think the beginning of the direction will start to form at least a little bit with the decisions on the roster, with the decisions of tendering a contract, and then finally going after, what might be, who might be interesting in the Rule 5 draft. And this is what Deckhart says. The Rule 5 draft will be held on December 10th. Will DePodesta choose to rebuild the Rockies using players from other teams who are left unprotected? Again, his decisions here will provide a sense of his approach to the issues. If it's to believe that the Moneyball approach, and again, it's hard to, just cut and paste something from 10 years ago and a whole different team in a whole different era. But we will get that idea of what are his what does he look for in a player? What is he looking for in these contracts? How is he looking to navigate some of these things? And how does he look at the current state of the roster? If I'm the Rockies, I think the Rule 5 draft, it could be a very enticing and interesting spot for you to be really successful. I think this is an area that you hope that a guy like DePodesta comes in with the analytic focus, and him and his team really dive in and say, here's our opportunities here. Here's these guys that can help us thrive in the margins. Here's a guy that can help us be a utility. Again, there are utility guys, but here's a bullpen arm we can get that'll be able to handle what we want to do. And we think that he can perform this way. Because one of the intriguing things that's going to require that's going to be a factor here is the Coors Field elements and looking at baseball through that lens. I do wonder, as the Rockies have gone outside of the organization here, what does that look like for his mind as well in this player evaluation? The contracts being tendered, the Rule 5. What does he think will be successful here? Because he's got to have some sort of an idea of that already, of what he thinks, looking at the current roster, looking at the results from the last couple of years for some of these young guys or last year, looking at how they handle home versus road splits. What are their tendencies as a hitter? There's going to be, it's a lot of information to come at once. And that's going to be the interesting factor. I know I don't want to just say Coors, but I wonder what that factor and what that element, how that influences his decisions right now and his approach to building his team, building his unit, and making decisions about the roster, which, like we said, they have to do. Oh, they have a lot of roster decisions to make over the last month, and and free agency is here as well. So, players' options, like people are going to be being signed. And I'm not saying the Rockies are going out making a big deal or anything like that. But every day, a guy that you might have your eyes on could get signed. So the Rockies are going to have to really look at how they build this roster. And there is no simple answer. It is going to be we got to capitalize here. We got to capitalize there. And then it is going to eventually say, we're going to have to do something in free agency. All right, let's keep breaking down the early predictions, the early thoughts here for the Colorado Rockies, coming up in segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. Gametime's got you covered when you need tickets to all the big events, and the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. You want to just go somewhere not too concerned with where you're sitting, just looking to maximize your deal and just get in the venue? Well, you can check out the zone deals. Pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you're going to buy tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. We're also brought to you by Doer, and this just came in the mail today. Audio audience, stick with me. Video audience, check this out. I just got my new favorite pair of jeans from Doer. They look great, feel great, super comfortable. One of the things that I'm super excited about is I don't necessarily love a tight fitting jean that kind of makes me, all clutched and uncomfortable. No, they feel great. And one of my favorite things about them too, they help keep me cool with the Cool Max technology that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. They're super comfortable, feel great and high quality, and they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, which is huge for me. I'm a guy, I move around a lot. Sometimes I have some issues with clothes and chafing. Nah, not going to happen here with my Doer jeans. And not only that, check out this awesome shirt that they sent me that's going to be perfect for the winter. Thick, warm, but not too thick. It's not going to be someone who runs hot, as someone who, is a person that often feels more warm, and especially as the holidays when heat's going to be cranked up. Now I am going to be set with my Doer jeans and my Doer shirt. They are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. Simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. And you can check Doer in store right there in Denver. It's at 2621 Laramie Street. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. And you can mention my promo code LOCKEDONDenver in store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopdoer.com/LockedOnDenver for 15% off. That's shopdoer.com/LockedOnDenver. All right, Rockies fans, we're back in action here for segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies, as we're bouncing around, looking at some of the signs, reacting to some of the things that Paul DePodesta has said as his new challenge. He says he's a sucker for challenge, and the Colorado Rockies will certainly be a big one. Let's see here, and this is what he told Thomas Harding, and this is what Thomas Harding writes about that approach to the challenge. I shared this with them. I don't have all the answers to the secret to our success moving forward, DePodesta said, but I'm pretty confident with all the people on that call. There are some great ideas, a lot of experiences, and a lot of great observations that I want to tap into. Ultimately, I want to create a shared vision for your organization and an identity for what we want our team to look like, both in terms of pitchers and in terms of hitters, but I'm not going to walk into a room and say, I got it, here it is. And this is Thomas Harding's reaction and observations to that. DePodesta will beef up the baseball ops department, likely a general manager for hands-on duties, but employees in place should shorten his learning curve. At the GM meetings, Danny Montgomery, vice president and assistant general manager of scouting, and Amir Mamdani, director of baseball operations, are working with DePodesta. While there was concern that the Rockies' job search was pushing into November, DePodesta pointed out that in 2004, he was named Dodgers GM the day before spring training opened. I'll just say with that, the thing there is, I still don't like how long this took. I still don't like how far behind it felt like the Rockies are. I don't think this decision should have taken until November, especially if you were so impressed with the first time that you spoke with this guy who was, in a different sport and not focused on a playoff run or the second half of the season or something like that. I do, as much as we can sit here and say that timeline, the timeline isn't a little bit problematic. It is plain and simple. The amount, like we were just talking about, he now has less than 2 weeks to make massive roster decisions. He has less than 2 weeks to do full comprehensive analysis of the players within the organization. That's not great, especially for a team that needs, he needs to be looking at every last detail. He needs to be looking down through just about every player, at least, especially players through the AA level. The Rockies need to start being able to look at what guys can they turn to that can make impacts this year, that make impacts in 2027. I mean, the evaluation really, I think maybe I'm overestimating what it takes to look into and look at player evaluations, especially when we're talking about, we're Moneyball analytics. It could just be numbers thrown at him on a spreadsheet or however they do it. And maybe that's all he really needs to see. But I that's kind of like, hey, that's one of those answers where you got to say what you got to say. That's not gonna. I don't sit here and feel any better about you saying I was the Dodgers GM right before the season started. Also adds to Thomas Harding basically talking about being impressed with Warren Schaefer. He's going to be part of the process. I'm still sitting here. I firmly believe Warren Schaefer will be the manager of the Rockies. On MLB Network, he was talking about the importance of a manager and the importance of a manager being someone, having a good relationship with the players. And what did we hear a lot about this year? The relationship between Warren Schaefer and the players, especially the younger players, and especially some of the younger guys that the Rockies will probably be turning to as they continue to go there. A lot of these guys will have the relationship with Warren Schaefer. Warren Schaefer can go into a season where, he's probably navigating the weird stuff here, but he can go into, after this is figured out, go into the spring and go in with his approach, his philosophy, and everything he wants to do. And I think that makes it just a little bit easier for DePodesta to have a guy that has that relationship. And again, is a young manager figuring it out. You're not bringing, there might be still questions. There might still be some concerns there, but you don't have to worry about having a manager that maybe isn't a good players, doesn't have a good relationship with the players, especially if that's the type of thing that you're really focused on for a manager. I continue to think that Warren Schaefer will be the manager for the Colorado Rockies going forward here. And I thought this was an interesting question here as well, because I think this is an interesting question with part of this evaluation. And it's something I brought up as well. The track record, the Browns tenure, the Deshaun Watson contract, there's stuff that happened and alongside, not necessarily reaching some of the same levels that he reached with the A's back in the day when he was in baseball. That is an interesting challenge. And here's what, Thomas dove into this. And here was his answer about that. While the Rockies are reeling from the signing of Chris Bryant, who's been injured for most of the first 4 years of a 7-year, $182 million contract, DePodesta was part of a major Browns deal gone wrong. Quarterback Deshaun Watson was acquired from the Houston Texans for multiple draft picks and a $230 million guaranteed contract at a time that he was facing sexual assault allegations. Watson has alternately performed poorly and dealt with injuries. There are long-term contracts that don't work out like that, DePodesta said. That doesn't mean there's not still a chance, but they don't work out as well as anyone anticipated or the way anyone wanted to work out on all sides. I think there was some other, I think I saw another quote claim, that he was taking responsibility, saying they all take responsibility for the Deshaun Watson thing. But this kind of goes into my evaluation period, and the amount of time that he has to evaluate the roster before needing to make decisions. Deshaun Watson, obviously, before, amidst all this stuff and that, leading into that deal and leading and before all the stuff that came out and before the injuries, of course, was one of the most intriguing options to go after. It was a very, he was one of the best players in football at the time. But I have my hesitations there. If you were willing to compromise on what happened and all the stuff that was coming out about Deshaun Watson, all the stuff that was coming out, and you were able to push all of that, I mean, that does show a little bit of the ugly side of sports. And I don't think that this is one that I can easily brush off. That is not proper evaluation of the player. I mean, it's hard because the on the field stuff was showed that this is a quarterback that can be a game changer, certainly. But if you're just going to completely disregard multiple accusations, multiple issues off the field, multiple things, that leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. And again, it just leads me to, okay, You got to go get that big fish. You got to go get that big deal. You got the thing that's going to save this is that big deal. I don't know. That's not going to be the thing that's going to get the Rockies out of the hole here, and anything going on anytime soon. I just think that's one that hopefully is a growth point and a learning moment here. But this isn't that deal and the Browns 10-year stuff. I can't just push that to the side. I think there's enough warning signs and stuff there that you can easily have very reasonable concerns about that evaluation and about the talent evaluation. Different sport, different thing there, but Chris Bryant's body betrayed him. He was a player that, coming in there, the risk you took was signing a player that you thought was going to be, maybe even if he declined as a player, at least would be on the field doing things. Chris Bryant's, the frustrating part about Chris Bryant wasn't that he was a bad player. There were red flags, certainly, and the Rockies overcommitted, but there wasn't glaring, huge things that were totally inexcusable to brush away just for the sole fact of we got to go get this quarterback, and then we got to give him the most guaranteed money and all of this. We got to reward this guy, and we got to make it happen. I do think that needs to be something that cannot just be easily forgotten. Is that contract and that deal and the deals made during his time in Cleveland. All right, gone a little long. Let's take our final break and put a bow on this one, and let me know what's on your mind. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible. That includes FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action other than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets to a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets. Yeah, it's $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked on Rockies here. Segment number 3 coming to a close here on this Wednesday edition of the Locked on Rockies podcast. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Hey, a couple of things that we didn't get to here from this really great piece over on Purple Row from Renee Descartes on what to watch for Paul DePodesta's first couple of, the short term here. We're talking about the 40-man roster. We're talking about that. Some of the other things that Renee points out, selecting a general manager. I'm actually glad that there's going to be a team. I do think that Harding had a good point. Having a team around him, being able to bring in his staff that he wants as well. I do think that will help with the process. We'll see if they're we'll see if it pans out in terms of on the field. But I do think that it's like, okay, I know I can't do it alone. I don't have all the answers. Let's bring some people in. Let's work on this and let's try to tackle this. Get some other perspectives here from your GM, from some of the other people, in the front office. And let's be able to form a cohesive identity and plan that we're all on the same page about so we can really emphasize and do what we need to do. So we're executing that plan and doing it all on the same page. I do like that there will be a search here. And let's see. There will also be determining who will play for the Rockies in 2026, deciding if any current Rockies players are trade candidates. Renee Descartes keeping her eye on Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar. Those probably really are, outside of Hunter Goodman, the biggest trade pieces that you might have. Renee says, I do not expect the Rockies to be active in the free agent market. However, I do think they will probably sign a low-cost player or two. Look, someone's got to play for the Rockies in 2026. Those signings will reveal a little bit about the plan going forward. Filling in the minor league coaching staffs, begin building analytics and player development systems. There's all sorts of stuff that, that there is so much work to do. And every day is important here. Every day matters at this stage, as the Rockies aren't going to have drastic. They're not going to turn around in a couple of months and be drastically different than what they were last year. But we need to see it moving in the right direction. And these early signs, these early moves, these early decisions They're going to start painting the picture of that and what the Rockies can expect going forward. Folks, that's going to do it for us here on Locked On Rockies for today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. And if you need more coverage of Colorado sports, we got you covered on the #1 sports podcast, Locked On Podcast Network, because we got Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.